Paul wrote some of the most touching words and revealing words that were ever to be written in reference to the death of Jesus Christ in Philippians, the 3rd chapter and the 10th verse. The cry of his heart, that I might know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering, being conformed to his death, or being made conformable to his death, that I might know him. That I might know him in the power of his resurrection and in the fellowship of his suffering. For centuries, since the dawn of Christianity, men and women alike in churches and organizations have sought to understand the power of God. We have great conventions. People tell us that it's simply faith. And look, I'm for all of the men that preach faith, so don't get any ideas. But there's one element in one of the great truths. They tell you that it's praying, and I'm for praying. But praying and believing to bring you into a place of power is to bring you into a place of knowing Jesus. Now listen carefully. To know Jesus, you've got to know him in the fellowship of his suffering if you want to know him in the power of his resurrection. That I might know him in the power of his resurrection and in the fellowship of his suffering. Perhaps no man in all of history suffered for the cause of Christ any more than the Apostle Paul. That prayer was answered. It was a prayer of his life, that he might know God in the fellowship of his suffering. For were he not to understand the fellowship of his suffering, he would never experience the power of his resurrection. That which God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. There is never an Easter without a Good Friday. There is never a sunrise without a sunset. There is never a new day till an old one dies. This Bible tells us, Jesus said it in John's Gospel, 12th chapter and the 24th verse, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it brings forth much fruit. Taking the communion and remembering him, I ask tonight that it might bring a prayer into your life and my life, an expensive prayer, that I might know him, that I might know him. I might know him in the dimensions of his power, the power of the resurrection, and that I might know him in the dimensions of the cross, because you can't have the one without the other. Few of you, if any, have ever heard anyone stand up and preach The price of power is your willingness to accept the cross. Few people ever hear sermons on that subject, but it is the truth. If you want to walk with Him in resurrection power, you must walk with Him in Good Friday, the Good Friday experience of suffering. This was Paul's prayer. He experienced it. He experienced the power of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and he experienced the sufferings of Jesus Christ. Many years ago, it's when my mother was just a young lady. She visited a home where a woman by the name of Mattie Perry had a little school. There was a young lady in that school by the name of Lillian Trasher. Lillian Trasher felt called to go to Egypt and to work as a missionary in Egypt. She couldn't get anyone much to support her. She came by this city and stopped in Glad Tidings. Went to Egypt with absolutely no one standing with her. She joined a missionary couple whose names I do not know and whose names really are irrelevant. And she went way down the Nile River, down to a place called Asiut, Egypt. She stayed with this couple, this missionary couple. And God began to touch her heart to do something for the children of Egypt that were dying and suffering. But before she went there, this is an important part of the story. Lillian was engaged to a wonderful young man. They were planning to be married. God called her and says, "Lillian, I want you to go to Africa as a missionary." She talked with this young man, her fiance, whom she was planning to marry, and he said, "I'm not called to Africa." And with broken hearted and lots of tears, she said, "I can't marry you because I felt the call of God and I have to go." And with no support, she went to this place, having given up marriage, having given up her family. One day she was walking down the street and she saw a dying child thrown away, left on the street to die. She walked by, she said, "I am a Christian. I can't walk home and leave that baby to die on this street by itself." She picked the baby up, brought this child home, sick, terribly sick, stayed up nights, nursed this child to health. It wasn't long before she saw another child deserted, and she brought that one home. Said, "I can't pass a dying child by." She brought a third one and a fourth one. She had no money. She filled her room and the room around her, and the missionary said to her, "Lillian, you have to get out. We have important things to do. You must leave or give up bringing home these dying children. First thing you know, this house is full of crying, dying children. We can't sleep. We can't work." She said, I can't do that. I can't." They sent her out, and she went into a dangerous part of that city, total stranger. Took those babies with her, without a penny of support, not a soul in this world to look after her but God. One of the great miracles of the 20th century is the story of Lillian Trasher. Other children came and she filled the house. Then every day she had to pray for enough food to feed They eat twice a day there only. She prayed in the morning for food for her children and herself. Never, ever once in the morning did she have any food for the night. Never once. And every night that day she would pray, give me food for these babies tonight. They never went without a meal, and she never had 2 meals. Never 2. Time went on, and mothers whose children were dying and who couldn't take care of them, who had been deserted, came themselves, and she took the widows. And the children's home grew. Then she had 100 children. Then she took the widows and the mothers and she put them in charge of the older children, and the older children in charge of the older children. And Lillian slept with all of the newborn babies they were given. Because she said, I couldn't ever trust anybody. I never found anybody I could trust that wouldn't sleep if a baby cried. When I saw her, she was an old woman. She said my ear was so tender that a child never cried but what I heard it. Never a baby cried, but I heard that child cry. The day came when there were 1,000 children in her home. Buildings rose up on the Nile. But with 1,000 children, she never had enough money to buy 2 meals. Just one. The blind, the widows, the dying. When I met her and heard her, she was an old woman called a Mother of the Nile. One day she said, after 20 or 30 years of never having enough food for 2 meals, she said she sat down to read the Word and to talk to God. She said, God, it's been a long time since I left home. Never been back. It's been a long time since I said goodbye to the man that loved me and that I could have married and had a home. It's been a long time. It's been a long time that I've never known where the next meal was coming from. Let's have a contract. I'm tired. She said, I don't want to have to pray for food anymore. I'll pray for other things. Let me just turn the food business over to you now. From that day till the day Lillian Trasher died, she never had to pray one more time for food. One day royalty from England was visiting Egypt, and they asked to be taken to her, to see her. Lillian said, I never entertained royalty. She said, I took them around the place and showed them the hundreds of blind and dying, 1,000 children that were given up. When she got through, she said, I don't know how to do this. I'm not from aristocracy, and I've never been raised to entertain royalty, people of great stature. But as they sat that evening, this great man said, Miss Trasher, never apologize. I'm the one that should be careful. I'm in the presence of a great woman, a great person. She had the power to pray in food for thousands of people. It's a book, a story of how money came. It's incredible. But one day, Lillian Trasher had to die. She had to die. The reason Jesus had such power, the reason he had such faith, he was committed. There was nothing that he held for himself. It was not for himself. Jesus never healed a man to be popular or powerful. He never held a service to be successful. He never touched a leper to have somebody run around and scream that he had something. In fact, most times he said, don't tell anybody. He had compassion. Paul said, this is the man that I want to know. At that greatest prayer meeting of all times, the garden, when he knelt alone. I've stood in that garden a many a time. There is a big stone there. Nobody really knows whether he knelt at that great stone or not. There is a stone like the artist has pictured. It is there. And the trees are from 1,000 to 2,000 years old that stand there. Some of those trees might have been there when he was there. I walked under those trees. I thought of that night when he left them, and then he took Peter, James, and John. Left the 8. Judas wasn't there. And then he took the 3, and then he went on further. And went on a little further, and he went by himself. To really know Jesus, you got to go a little further. You got to walk a little further than your friends and your family. You got to walk by yourself. There comes a time when you want to, if you're going to know the Lord in an intimate way, you've got to walk it by yourself. Nobody can walk it with you. It was alone that Jacob met God as he wrestled with him, with the angel that night, that made the difference when he was changed to Israel. Alone. It was alone that Mary, the mother, gave birth to Jesus. It was alone that she made the consecration. Joseph couldn't make it for her. In fact, he couldn't make it with her. He made it later. She stepped out alone and made it alone. There's a time in your life that if you're going to really know Jesus, you got to step out a little beyond everyone else around you, and it's between you and him, that I might know him, that he may be closer to me than my dearest friend, my wife, my husband, my children, anything in the world, that I might know him. It was alone on Patmos that John got that great revelation that saw into heaven and another world. Tonight, as we take this communion, I want you to take it as though you were taking it by yourself with him. He did die alone. that you may never totally be alone, He will be with you. He'll lead you beyond relationships of earth and lead you beyond relationships of people. But there's one experience that you will never have that He had. You can know Him in the fellowship of His suffering. You will never have to know what it was on the cross when He died all alone. He died alone that you would never have to be alone. That's why He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That was the worst of it all. And God was pleased, as the American Standard says, to crush His Son. And He crushed Him. And Jesus was crushed. Not as much by the whips, not as much by the weight of the cross. He was crushed when He cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" God forsook Him, turned His back on Him, that He wouldn't have to turn His back on you. That you wouldn't die alone. That you wouldn't walk through that valley alone. That I might know Him. That I might know Him. The fellowship of His suffering and the power of His resurrection. That I might keep nothing back from Him. That I might know Him. Do you really want to know Him? Do you really want to know Him? Then you must pick up your cross. With these few words, in a couple of folks that I know, I close. The life that affected me most was that of my mother. She modeled Christianity for me. She was just a young girl. She was 18. As a young girl, I have a picture of her, a beautiful girl, beautiful. She was filled with the Spirit. And kneeling at the altar, God said, "Are you willing to be put out of your home and have people despise you and to suffer for me? To bear a reproach for my name?" And my mother thought a while, and she said, "Yes. If that's the price I must pay to know you and to be close to you, I will do it." Little did she realize that in a few short days, my grandfather would confront her and with the pastor. And then when she didn't surrender the experience of the baptism, my own grandfather told my mother, "You must get out. You can't be a member of this family anymore. If you're going to speak in tongues and go to the Pentecostal church, you can't be a part of this family. You must leave." My mother said, "I love you, Papa. I love this home. But I love God the best. And I won't ever surrender what God has done for me." Packed her little suitcase, stepped out at 18, nowhere to go. Didn't know where she was going. From one night to the next, she didn't know where she'd sleep. But she said, power began to come on her life. She was touched. God began to use her in a marvelous way. She experienced His power. life has been blessed with great women. I went to Zion, and over Zion there are these words, "Thy will be done," in a big cup. And it was when Sister Gibson, her husband, was planning to start the school. And she walked in an unfinished auditorium. The original auditorium was unfinished. She stood at the back. She had a vision. She saw her husband in a coffin. It was a relatively young man. He was 50, approximately. And God said to her, "Are you willing to drink the cup? And are you willing to take the cross to experience my power and my glory?" Broken-hearted, her husband was sick. She thought he would be healed. Tears streaming down her face. She said, "My God, if that's the price, I'm going to do it." A few days he was dead. She started a school she never dreamed of starting alone. He was the teacher. He was the great Bible teacher. Alone, God touched her life that would touch the ends of the earth through her consecrated life. My first impressions of Catherine Kuhlman, and with this I'll close, were not good. I just didn't like the way she acted. But then, when I met the real Catherine Kuhlman, I was tremendously blessed. I saw past the veneer, and I heard her tell the story, how that she was living with a man who was not her husband. They were married. She had taken him from another woman, stolen him, and loved him so much. And how God said to her, "Catherine, you've got to take the cross. You've got to give him up. You've got to say goodbye to him and take up your cross and follow me." Out of absolute brokenness, crushed, she said, "Yes, yes, I'll take the cross." Catherine Kuhlman was to bless tens of thousands of people because she drank the cup. She drank the cup in consecration. It is tragic to press your lips to that cup and hold anything closer to your heart than Christ. He gave up everything for you. It's sad to take that broken body into your hands and to save yourself. You mustn't do that. When you drink the cup tonight, I want you to say, "Jesus, whatever the cost, whatever the price, I want to know you. Whatever you want out of my life, it's yours. I am not playing games. God, you paid an awesome price that I will never have to pay. If I were to give all and sacrifice all, I will never be alone as you were when you cried out on that cross. I want you to make a commitment tonight when you take the communion on this Good Friday will take the cross. I will enter into your suffering. I'll not run from the hardships. I'll not run from the difficult places. I want you. I love you, Jesus, more than life. I want you. I never realized a year ago that this Good Friday, Joey, who is sitting back here, Joey and Laura, Jean and I met today at the cemetery. I was kneeling down, planted our daughter's grave. And Joey was there with a plant by his son's grave. I'm not asking why. I want God's power. I want to serve him all the way. I have no regrets. I don't want to miss his power. To walk in his footsteps on Good Friday is my desire. To carry my cross is my desire. That we might know him in Revelation, the power of his resurrection. That I might know him, the fellowship of his suffering. That we might know God. That we might experience him. Not just in things being given to us that mean nothing, but in power that will transform people's lives. We might see the glory of God, not how much I can get from God. How much can I give you? I owe you everything. Closing. You know, it's when you give yourself wholly to him. Folks, I hope no one misunderstood me. We need mighty faith. We need mighty prayers. But God can't give us that until we give him ourselves. We've got to give ourselves and our lives. You can't really reach out for all that God has for you until you give him yourself. When you give of yourself to God, when you turn loose of yourself, then God's power can flow through you. Praise God. Praise God. That I might spend and be spent, Paul said. You can't spend him until you give him your life, that he can spend you. When he can take you and use you, then his glory can come through you. When you make the commitment, God then can touch you. Then he can bless you. Praise God.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out the channel for more messages.